Matt Taibbi, what'd you make of that speech?
So I've seen a lot of unsuccessful, meandering, bad Donald Trump speeches on the campaign trail and elsewhere. I thought comparatively this was a very successful speech. I'm a little bit surprised actually by some of the criticisms by um, some of your other guests. For Donald Trump, when he's not being crazy, when he's not talking about invading Greenland, and when he's reorienting his message around the thing that got him elected last year, which is to relentlessly hammer the theme that he and his party are America firsters, and that the other party has difficulty applauding for things like religion or patriotism. That's when he wins, and I think he did a very good job tonight with that. For Donald Trump, I think that was a very successful speech.
So because he was so obsessively focused with making the case about protecting the country from danger, is that the kind of core of it?
Well, look, he won the 2024 election fairly comfortably using these exact themes. And what's hurt him in the time period since has been a series of scandals involving overreach in the First Amendment. He's lost a considerable amount of ground on his core issue of immigration, and he went to great lengths to try to reassert his advantage there. You have to remember that neither party right now is very popular. So these little advantages in certain issues matter quite a lot. And when Trump sticks to the things, to the areas where he does have an advantage, like DEI, immigration, the trans issue, he had a moment there in the speech tonight. He wins. It's a moment where neither party has a lot of popularity, and I think the messaging for this situation was good.
So, Matt, before we turn to Gabe, I do want to know what is your sense of what the left ought to be doing, given that President Trump has been shrewd, refocusing. These are the issues that kind of galvanized his plurality in 24. What do you think that they ought to be doing in order to kind of regain ground?
Well, if you look at the polling with Democrats, you see that the number of people within the party who feel positively about Democrats is lower than it's ever been. According to a poll that started in 2001, and the reason for that is 4 in 10 of the people in the party feel they're not going aggressively enough against Donald Trump, and 1 in 10 feel that they're not articulating a message clearly enough. I think it's much more the latter is the problem. They're properly focusing on things like affordability when the last year was not great for the economy. The year started off well for Trump, but 2025 was not great. The problem, the area where they have real trouble on the left is letting go of issues that are total losers politically, like the trans issue, and the immigration issue, frankly, right? Like they've managed to turn it around because Donald Trump is overplaying his hand with the ICE raids, but otherwise, what happened under the Biden administration was extremely unpopular, and so I think they need to let go of the things that are hurting them and focus on the economic issues.
Gabe, I want to ask you, we're looking at a midterm where the vast majority of people think that at the very least, Democrats are going to retake the House of Representatives. I mean, it would be an astounding feat if the Republicans were able to hold on to the House.
And the Senate seems to be within reach.
The Senate is within reach. It's going to be tough. It's going to rely on states. It's going to rely on defeating Susan Collins, who's you earlier accurately described as the Terminator. Wins in Alaska, wins in Texas. These are difficult things. But Gabe, I'm wondering, after tonight's speech, do you expect any kind of bump for Republicans, any jolt of hope or anything like that? Is there any sense after that speech that Republicans are in better standing as they head into the November midterms?
I think that I would say that one thing about the speech, I was expecting Trump to be calling on Congress to pass his tariffs, which expire in 150 days. That did not happen. And I mean, my main thought is I feel like he did not do that because he recognizes that that's an issue that it's not exactly easy for Republicans, and particularly in the House, to be running on in the elections. I mean, they got struck down by the courts in a lot of these states, affordability being the primary issue, terrorists driving up costs, particularly manufacturing. In Trump world, some of the main reactions I had gotten, one Trump advisor told me they were surprised he stuck to the script as much. I think that script was a former Trump advisor was sort of talking about how they, were very pleased with him being high energy, which they defined as like the best thing possible. I think that he was touting his some of his fiscal accomplishments and then vowing to do more in certain ways, which did work to his benefit. So he announced this AI announcement related to data centers. So telling major companies that they have an obligation to pay for their own power needs. AI is a huge issue in the midterms. He did not talk about AI very much. AI super PACs are spending hundreds of millions of dollars. It's dividing the parties in pretty unique ways.
It could stand to wipe out every entry-level white-collar job in America, essentially.
Yeah, I mean,
that's beyond that.
That's the argument of Republicans. And I know I was speaking the State of the Union was wrapping up, I was speaking with Kellyanne Conway's polling firm, and they were pointing me to how they do believe that AI data center initiative is actually really crucially important for at least his message as far as moving the economy forward. They think that that's an issue in communities where they're concerned about rising electricity costs, water costs, and they think that. So I think he touched on AI and that worked to his benefit, but he definitely could have.
It's also keeping the economy afloat. Kind of also CapEx. Kind of this is something where if you remove that stool, it could be ugly.
Right. Yeah. I am sort of struck, though, by the fact that we didn't, these two massive issues, China and AI, he did sidestep, essentially. Narrowed in on the data centers, but it was amazing what he didn't say. Like with Charlie Parker, the notes he didn't play.
Yeah.
That was the interesting stuff there. Was that Charlie Parker? Am I getting that jazz guy right?
I'm afraid my command of jazz is limited.
Yeah, but
I can't scat for you though.
Yeah,
all right. Revisit that.
When we hit the real after show, Reihan here is going to scat for everybody. But I do feel, would you guys agree? This is my main takeaway from the speech. In that 2 hours, there was a pretty good 40-minute speech. I'm throwing that to both of you.
I think that what he succeeded at. So this speech was written by Vince Haley, who's Trump's domestic policy council head, and Vince Haley's the architect of Trump's America 250 initiative. It's really like his baby, and I think you could really see that in the speech that Vince wrote. Like Trump was trying to orchestrate this vision of patriotism. The most unifying moment easily of that speech was the hockey moment. I mean, that was like the only time that both sides stood. Actually, the only other time people all stood up was the stock trading mention where Elizabeth Warren.
You even had Elizabeth Warren on video. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I think he succeeded in that regard. I think that where he did not succeed was the granulars. There's a former Trump advisor who told me this that I'll just read. He said, he touted his accomplishments as he should and rightly blamed Democrats for the economic hole he is digging us out of. But I wish there was more acknowledgement to Americans who are not yet feeling economic relief. I would have liked to hear a message to those pocketbook voters who are still feeling squeezed. It's interesting perspective. As someone who, former advisor to Trump, who does think that he could have been more granular on economy.
Right. I mean, there's the affordability issue, but which is another thing that he didn't quite get into. But it seems like the president's powers to lower prices right now extremely limited, and there was a tacit acknowledgement of that in the speech.
I do think that the idea of acknowledging to say that we're making progress, but there's more to be done. Matt, I do want to, while we have you, just ask you a little bit about the politics of AI, the data centers, and what have you. This seems incredibly potent, and I wonder, is your mental model that this is going to look like a kind of horseshoe? There are going to be populists on the right and left, kind of going after the hyperscalers, after these companies, and then there's going to be a kind of establishment that does not. I will say that I'm personally kind of a booster. I'm just a believer that this is going to be important. It's important that we're ahead of the Chinese. It's important that kind of we embrace it. But I'm curious if that's where you see things heading, like an all-out, bipartisan populist revolt against this wave.
Yeah, I mean, he's already dealing with a bipartisan populist revolt on other issues. Involving Israel and some other things, which is new. The podcasting world is divided in a way that it wasn't when he won the election. The AI issue is a significant one for his financial backers. You have to remember that was the turning point that led to him essentially getting corporate backers for the 2024 stretch run. Was when the Silicon Valley got briefed by the Biden administration about their plans for AI, and that was when there was a row of defections to Trump that were highly significant to him in terms of his ability to compete that summer. So, I don't know exactly how it's going to play. I think he can offset some of that issue by stressing, if the numbers continue to be good on the job front, for instance, there were 130,000 new jobs in January, which is almost as many as there were all of last year. If anything like that pace continues, it'll be easier for him to massage that issue somehow heading into the midterms.
We'll see how it pays out. Matt, Taibbi, Gabe Kaminsky, thank you so much for joining us tonight and staying up late.